The heat is turning up in Las Vegas, and it's not just the weather. The Raiders are heading into a crucial stretch of the offseason with mandatory minicamp set to kick off on June 10th. Right now, the roster sits at 91 players, which means any new addition would require a corresponding subtraction. That's just how the numbers work in the NFL. But what really adds some spice to this period is the possibility of unexpected roster moves. Surprise cuts that could catch even the most dialed-in fans off guard. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. This isn't about the usual end-of-roster bubble guys who are always on the fringe. We're talking about players who, if released in the next few days, would genuinely shock most people following the team. These are names that might have once seemed locked in for a role, maybe even a starting job. But based on what we've seen through organized team activities, their status is suddenly not so secure. Let's start with someone who fits that. Mold perfectly. Cornerback Darnay Holmes. On the surface, cutting him could save the Raiders just over $1 million in cap space. So there's a financial angle here, but it goes deeper than that. When you look at how the coaching staff has been structuring the defense, especially in nickel packages, Holmes hasn't been a consistent part of the first team reps. Instead, we're seeing guys like Eric Stokes, Darian Porter, and Lonnie Johnson Jr. being rotated in, not to mention some of the younger, more athletic defensive backs that fit the mold this regime seems to prefer. Now remember, Holmes was once viewed as a potential starter at the nickel spot. Early in the offseason, there was real conversation that he could anchor that role, but that buzz has cooled off considerably. His skill set, while solid, might not align with the vision the Raiders have on defense moving forward. They want length, they want speed, and they want versatility. Holmes, while a reliable depth piece, might just find himself the odd man out. And again, if the Raiders were to release him this week, it would surprise a lot of folks. But based on the signs, maybe. It shouldn't. Shifting over to the safety position, Trey Taylor is another name that could unexpectedly be shown the door. Cutting Taylor would only cost the Raiders $39,000 in dead cap and free up nearly $1 million. That's not the most pressing reason to move on from him, though. The reality is that Lonnie Johnson and Thomas Harper have been getting more reps, especially in various coverage schemes. Taylor, despite being a Jim Thorpe Award winner in college, that's given to the top defensive back in the country, just hasn't found his groove yet in the NFL. It's worth remembering that Taylor was a 7th-round pick by the previous regime, and his fit in the current system isn't exactly crystal clear. Yes, he offers value on special teams, and that could still earn him a spot. But when you look at the depth at safety, with names like Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Pola-Mao also in the mix, Taylor is going to have to really stand out in a hurry. And here's the thing. Everyone around the building seems to love the guy. He's got a great attitude, great work ethic, and is a high-character individual. But sometimes, even good people get caught up in the numbers game. If the Raiders feel like he won't make the final roster, they might decide to do right by him and let him go early, giving him a better shot to catch on elsewhere. And that kind of move, while surprising to many, would make sense behind closed doors. Now let's talk wide receivers, and we'll start with Colin Johnson. This one's interesting because when the Raiders signed him, there was a decent amount of hype. He's a big-bodied receiver, listed at 6'6", and initially believed to be the tallest receiver in the league. That turned out not to be true, but still, he's up there in terms of size and has always been seen as a red zone threat. But here's the problem. We haven't heard much of anything about him throughout OTAs. And in an off-season where younger receivers have been flashing, guys like Trey Tucker and even some rookies who came in with little fanfare, the silence around Colin Johnson is deafening. He's not a player who has contributed much in recent years. And while the idea of him being a big target fits what some coaches want, the lack of buzz is concerning. When you scan the depth chart and listen to other analysts, it seems like there was an expectation that Johnson would make a bigger impact. That hasn't materialized yet. In a wide receiver room that suddenly feels more competitive than expected, being invisible is not a good sign. So if the Raiders decided to cut him this week, it would raise eyebrows. But again, it might be more of a signal that other guys are simply outplaying him. Another name to keep an eye on is Kyle Phillips. The Raiders signed him early in the offseason, and what made that move stand out is that Phillips was reportedly one of the first players brought in after Chip Kelly joined the staff. Kelly has history with Phillips from their UCLA days. Phillips was actually one of his earliest recruits. So there's a clear connection there. And for a while, that felt like a good sign for his chances of sticking around. But fast forward to now, and the outlook is murkier. Players like Jack Beck and Dante Thornton Jr. have been making waves. Even someone like Tommy Mellott, who has special teams value, seems to be climbing the internal rankings. Phillips, on the other hand, is still trying to regain momentum after missing all of last season. He's a smooth route runner, sure, and the familiarity with Chip Kelly could help. But if we're talking about upside and explosiveness, the younger guys seem to have the edge. In today's NFL, you can't build your wide receiver core based purely on comfort and familiarity. If you want to win, you need players who can create separation and make plays after the catch. Right now, it's unclear if Phillips is that guy. Let's jump into the backfield for a moment, not to talk about Zamir White, who's been discussed a lot already, but another running back in the mix, Dylan Laub. If the Raiders were to move on from him, it will clear out close to $1 million in cap space. And here's the thing, Laub was always going to be a long shot to make the final 53. The team drafted Ashton Jeanty, who's been incredibly impressive, and they brought in veteran Raheem Mostert to bring stability and experience to the unit. That's already 2 spots likely locked up. Laub's best shot at making a team was likely through special teams, but even there, he's facing stiff competition. Tommy Mellott has looked solid in that role. Trey Tucker can contribute in the return game, and then there's the ball security issue, something the Raiders front office and coaching staff have emphasized repeatedly. Laub's history with fumbles doesn't help his cause, and it might ultimately be what keeps him off the roster. When coaches preach turnover avoidance all offseason, and then you've got a player who has struggled to protect the ball in the past, that's a red flag that's hard to ignore. But speaking of running backs, we do have to circle back briefly to Zamir White. He's a name that keeps popping up because of how complicated his situation is. A former draft pick from a previous regime heading into the final year of his rookie deal and with serious competition breathing down his neck. The Raiders love what they're seeing from Jeanty, and Mostert brings that veteran reliability. And then you've got Sincere McCormick also fighting for a spot. It's crowded, and snaps are going to be hard to come by. Here's what makes White's situation unique. He might ask to be released. Think about it. If he's 4th on the depth chart and knows his opportunities will be limited, it might be in his best interest to seek a fresh start somewhere else. The NFL is a business, and players need tape to get contracts. If White spends the year buried on the depth chart, that's not going to help his case in free agency. So even though it might look like a surprise cut to fans, it could actually be a mutually beneficial move behind the scenes. The Raiders give White a chance to compete elsewhere, and he avoids fading into the background during a critical contract year. As we move closer to minicamp, expect the unexpected. Every year, teams make moves that shock people, not because the players weren't talented, but because scheme fit, positional depth, or even simple momentum shifted the outlook. The Raiders are no different. They're in the middle of retooling a roster with a new identity, a new coaching staff, and a clear vision of what they want to be. Faster, more dynamic, and more disciplined. That means some familiar names might not be around much longer, and fans would be wise to brace themselves for a few shakeups before the roster gets trimmed down any further. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest updates on our Las Vegas Raiders. And don't be shy, drop your thoughts on the news in the comments below. The NFL world is buzzing with a tantalizing rumor that could shake up the league's defensive landscape. Nassib, the standout defensive end, might be making a surprising return to the Las Vegas Raiders. The mere whisper of Nassib's potential comeback has sent waves through fan communities and analysts alike, sparking debates about what this move could mean for the Raiders and the broader NFL ecosystem. Nassib, who made headlines not just for his on-field prowess, but also for his courageous decision to come out as the first active NFL player to publicly identify as gay, has been a notable figure since his draft days. Known for his relentless pass-rushing ability and versatility on the defensive line, Nassib played a key role during his earlier stint with the Raiders, helping to solidify their defensive front. His departure left a noticeable gap, and speculation has been growing that the Raiders might be aiming to plug that hole by bringing him back. The context behind this possible reunion is intriguing. The Raiders, who have faced challenges in maintaining defensive consistency this season, could greatly benefit from a familiar face who already understands their system and culture. Nassib's experience and proven ability to disrupt offenses would be a significant boost, especially as the team eyes a playoff push. Rumors suggest that conversations have quietly taken place between Nassib's camp and Raiders management, though nothing has been confirmed publicly. This potential move also highlights the Raiders' strategic approach to roster building, valuing not just raw talent, but also locker room chemistry and leadership. Nassib's maturity and presence could serve as an important influence on younger players, while his athletic skills could provide the instant impact the Raiders desperately need on defense. Critics might question whether Nassib's performance remains at the elite level required in today's NFL, especially after his time away from the team. Yet, the mere possibility of his return has ignited excitement and speculation. Could the Raiders' defense regain some of its former grit and tenacity with Nassib back in the fold? Or is this simply a strategic rumor meant to gauge fan reaction and rattle rival teams? Only time will tell, but one thing is clear. Carl Nassib's name has re-entered the conversation, and the Raiders camp is anything but quiet. As the NFL trade deadline approaches and teams scramble to bolster their rosters, keep an eye on the Raiders' defensive line. The return of Nassib might just be the game changer the league didn't see coming. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay updated with exclusive news about our Las Vegas Raiders, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We can't wait to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next video.